Welcome, friend, to Life and Liberty Radio. I'm David Householder, here to encourage your pursuit of happiness. You and I are partners, exploring our shared spiritual journeys. Together, we're dreaming and working for a free society. Tell others today about our adventure in faith and freedom. So breathe in, open your mind, lift up your spirit. Let's get started.
Well, we're about a month into 2013, and most of us have ditched our New Year's resolutions. I've got a couple I'm still working on. But the truth is, habits often rule our lives, the patterns of our behavior that continue to sort of be the operating system for how we do things. And habits are so difficult to change, and we've got a behavioral corporate consultant person here. We've got Steve Goodwin from Turning West, and he understands habits. He's going to talk to us about a book about habits. We've got Dana Hanson from Lifehouse Church, and we also have Bob Ronglian from Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd. And we're all here from Southern California, meeting in Manhattan Beach to talk about this stuff. Steve, welcome to the program. Tell us about this habit book and what this has to do with what we're talking about here. People are giving up on their resolutions already.
Well, we've all struggled with persistent bad habits, whether it's wishing we exercised better or wishing we ate a little bit better, and we all have nagging bad habits. Well, and we've all given up with New Year's resolutions, and you hear so much about that at New Year's time as people saying, well, forget New Year's resolutions, we never keep them anyways. Well, there's an exciting new book out that I've found fascinating for myself and for my company in Turning West organizational development practice called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. It's
How do you spell that?
Duhigg, like
doohickey.
Like doohickey, yeah. I bet he gets that joke a lot. But he's a fascinating reporter and comes from a storyteller's perspective and tells the scientific story of the last 50 years of the discovery of how habits are formed in the human brain, the neurobiology of habit formation.
So basically, when we start doing things over and over, there's a pattern that evolves in our brain?
There's a pattern that evolves, and it's down in the basal ganglia of the brain, the very deepest recesses of the brain, way beyond even conscious thought. And what happens to us is a cue happens. I feel hungry, or someone sets a menu in front of me. I have a routine. Gee, I think I'm never going to eat again. I'm going to get as much as I can here. And there's a reward at the end. And so he argues that even if we were to lose some of our memory, and which has happened in two of the cases he tells the story of in the book, where scientists were able to watch what happens, these people were still having habits rule their lives. And they discovered how habits are formed, where they're stored.
If people lose their memories, like have amnesia, their habits are still there?
Their habits are still there. And they will still, and they have no awareness of how or why they walked around the block and followed the habit they followed over, decades, because they've always got.
I've seen this as a pastor. Maybe you guys have too. People on their deathbed, and they're unconscious, and you start praying the Lord's Prayer, and their mouths start moving. Yes. They start going along with it. So there's a habit there that's very deep in people that comes out.
And the trigger was, Our Father. Yeah. And the routine came out, and it's literally done at the basal ganglia of the brain. Yeah. So it's when you do pastoral visits or visits with people in that situation and they don't appear to be conscious, some of those old habits. That's why singing old hymns at bedsides of the old saints, it repeats that habit pattern. So here's the fascinating part of the book is to change a habit, you have to replace the routine. Our Father is the cue that begins the routine.
It's a cue, okay.
There's a cue, and then there's a routine, the repetition, the rote repetition of the.
So the cue is the menu. It was Our Father. Right.
And then there's a reward at the end. So Charles Duhigg tells a story of a young woman who walked into a laboratory. She's been a favorite laboratory subject, and over the past 2 years, she transformed every part of her life. She quit smoking. She ran a marathon. She got promoted at work. And she fundamentally changed her neurobiology of her brain by changing a keystone habit that then had the trickle effect
keystone
of changing.
Habit. Now that's one that changes every. You start with one.
Find one key habit that's holding you back most in your life, and change and focus all your energy on changing that one habit. It works the same, by the way, for organizations and for systems, for companies, for churches. And he tells some fascinating stories about Alcoa Aluminum and some other companies and organizations, even Saddleback Church and some other places, of how scientists discovered the social habits of people. The same patterns that work inside of us individually work in social groupings.
So there's a cue, there's a keystone one we want to start on, Now, a lot of us, we're all involved in church work. And would you guys say, Dana and Dana, let's start with you. Would you say that as we raise kids in a church, teaching them certain things lays down good patterns? And do you have some patterns in your life that go back to being raised in the church?
Well, the pattern of, having a good feeling emotionally if you are worshiping with people that you love, and it continues as you get older, in terms of you get that same good feeling emotionally because your friends are there. So one of the things that happens is people think that children, as they get older, get bored in worship and all that. Well, that may be the case, but so often, junior high school students and so forth, they'll continue to worship and they'll continue to be involved in a faith family if their friends are there, because they get the same results, the same reward. They feel good.
I did that. In fourth grade, my faith started actually slipping away, and I still kept going because of the good habits and the rewards that came with it. Church going was great. And when I came back to faith, when I was a young adult, then those habits kind of kept me going through that. Now, Bob, at your church, Bob Ronglin, we're talking with, he's at the Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd. You're trying to establish new habits in your church of gathering and of intentionality. And sometimes that can be challenging, but there's a reward for that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I found over my ministry is that almost all Christians believe that having a regular time to sit down, read Scripture, pray, listen to God, just kind of reflect, is a really valuable thing and an important part of Christian discipleship. But I found an incredibly high percentage of people, Christians, followers of Jesus, committed Christians, don't have that pattern. Even though they want to, they try, they just aren't able to establish that. And I think some of that is, our own kind of human proclivities. I think there's a little spiritual warfare in that. But what I found is that more and more people in our community have found breakthrough in that area by using various strategies to do exactly what we're talking about, and that is establish a regular pattern. And for me, it started with, I realized I was reading the newspaper every morning without fail over breakfast. I could hardly eat breakfast without reading the news, whether a paper or on my iPad or whatever. And I suddenly realized I was way more faithful to that than I was to reading Scripture.
Because that was deeper in your ganglia.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes,
so exactly. I said, okay, I'm going to swap out reading the newspaper over breakfast for reading Scripture. And I started reading the Bible while I was eating breakfast every morning.
No Bible, no breakfast.
Exactly. And now I literally, if I sit down to eat breakfast, my immediate reaction is, where's my Bible?
Well, that's exactly what Charles Duhigg says, how you change a bad habit, and which is why people who start New Year's resolutions are failing at this point. It's February 1st today, and why they've already failed is they fail to understand that, first of all, I have to replace the routine. So for you, the cue was, I'm hungry, it's time for breakfast, there's the cue. Then I have to, the brain just literally kicks into its most primitive function. I have to read something, and the reward is I finished breakfast. Yeah. So you replace the routine. Now, here's the other part of this. It's really fascinating for all of us in Christian work, is that Charles Duhigg says that's not enough to just replace the routine. You have to really believe that you can succeed.
If you're like me, you love getting packages in the mail from Amazon. I love to check the side of my house because that's where they come. I've got a little table set up there, and there's a package. And I love shopping with Amazon. You say, well, it costs extra with the shipping, but the truth is you'd spend a lot more in gas and time just driving around looking for stuff. You can find almost anything on Amazon. It's kind of like the old Sears catalog or the Wells Fargo wagon. It's part of our American tradition to have delivery to our homes. And if you shop on Amazon, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Would you please do all of your Amazon shopping through my website, davidhouseholder.com. Go to davidhouseholder.com. At the top of the page, there's an Amazon banner. Click on there and do your shopping from there. If you do that, I will get a portion of the proceeds, which will keep this show on the air. So it's good for you, it's good for me, it's good for everybody. Hey, it's good for America. Shop on Amazon and do it through davidhouseholder.com.
And he says one of the best lines in the book is, community is the best place to form belief.
Yeah. And I would say that's what's happened for us, because I started sharing that story in sermons and with people in discipling conversations and things like that, and encouraging them to, it didn't have to be breakfast, but to find something that they did consistently. Like, I didn't use this language, replace the routine, but that's essentially what I was telling them. And by my own example and encouragement, I think the faith was rising that they could find some breakthrough and achieve this goal that they really had, which was regular time with the Lord.
The community thing works in so many different ways. There's a plethora right now of weight loss apps, which people can get on their phones, and they can get them on their laptops, and they can keep track of what they're doing. And at the bottom of all the weight loss apps, it says you have a 90% higher chance of success if you join our community. Right. And actually talk to people about this, which is amazing. It's exactly what you're talking about. People want to pray. People want to have a spiritual life.
Yeah.
People, that's one of those things they aspire to but never get to because they don't have the support of the community.
And another way to talk about that is accountability, which sometimes we think of negatively because we think of coercion and judgment.
I think of job reviews.
Yeah, things like that. But and you're using support, which is a nice word too, but there's something a little bit more even than support when you enter into a cooperative, supportive kind of accountability. And I really believe discipleship is the key to living the abundant life that God has for you. But discipleship is a process of entering into accountable relationships where not only the community support is helping you change and grow and become a healthier, more fruitful person, but part of what's driving that is a willing participation in accountability. When we talk about weight loss groups or whatever, that's what it is. There's it's not a coercive thing, it's a friendly, supportive thing, but it is accountability. I know I'm going to go get on the scale, this is the old Weight Watchers thing. I'm going to stand on the scale on Tuesday morning. There's a built-in accountability to that. Most of us don't have that in our lives.
What Duhigg talks about in the book is it's so important. It's kind of like the final step. Like Steve was saying, you have a cue, you got your routine, you got your reward. You got to figure out all those things, and those things can change. But the point would be having a plan. That's the final step. You have a plan. And
doesn't everybody have a plan when they start?
Well, the thing is your plan is using, what's this cue? You've got to know your own self, and you got to know what you're trying to change. So you have to. So here's an easy one. About weight loss and so forth. Well, one of the reasons that we can gain weight, we'll eat a meal, and we have the habit of eating a meal at the same time, perhaps, or the same way. So in our fast-paced society, right, you don't always have that same exact time to eat and the same amount of time and all that. Well, one of the things we can do is eat slower. If you were to eat slower, you'll know you have a certain amount of time to eat. But if you eat slower, you will get filled and get that satisfaction of being filled as you're eating slower in the same way as you chow down really quick. But when you chow down really quick, you still get that satisfaction feeling, right? But if you eat slower, you'll get that satisfaction feeling, but you'll have consumed less calories. So that's the reward. It's the satisfaction feeling like, okay, I'm done eating, all right? So the routine part of it that you're changing, all right, would be I'm going to eat slower, and I'll still hit that same satisfaction feeling. Now, your cue is, well, when am I going to eat? So you can change and play around. You have to play around with the different things. It's not just, you don't just say, I'm going to lose weight. That's a plan right there. I'm going to eat slower. That would be my plan, okay? That's going to be the routine, or in the middle of it. That's the one little thing that I have changed. So my cue, it's time to eat. I'm going to eat. I eat slower. The results, I receive the same feeling that, okay, I'm done eating, but I've just consumed a bunch of, food, which has much less calories than the whole table full that I ate because I ate so quickly.
Well, we went out for dinner last night, the four of us, at the, what was it, Manhattan Beach Brew Company or whatever it was. And I checked online today, and I was really careful about what I ate. I was trying to kind of keep it low. I got vegetables instead of French fries, the whole thing.
1,800 calories.
Yeah, 1,400 something for me. I thought, whoa, it's just for one meal, 1,400 calories. It's just amazing how fast that can add up because there's such a reward in this food because it's served in such a way that's just this massive reward. It's like a reward that goes to a primal level of
which makes it kind of fun that you know how they publish the calories on a lot of menus.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you hate that, right? You hate the fact that it says because you're ready to eat, and then it goes 1,400 calories. I'm not going to eat that, you know. So that's actually a good thing. One thing that we do well in California. Right. Regulation.
Steve, bring this into organizational stuff. You're an organizational consultant at Turning West. You guys work together with organizations all over the world, actually, and you guys do things to help them change their patterns. But the truth is, you can do change wrong in an organization.
Yes. Because
if you don't pay attention to people's habits, they just leave.
Yes, we all have habits, and we all have habits as social groupings. It's one of the fascinating things I find about looking at people from a sociological perspective. We all have familiar patterns, and Duhigg, this New York Times business reporter, tells remarkably the stories of how this works. He tells a story, for example, in their Alcoa Aluminum in the mid-'80s. They hired a new chief executive, Paul O'Neill, from the Office of Management and Budget. And when he arrived at the meeting, the first meeting where he's going to be introduced to all the Wall Street executives, people thought it was a joke. They started laughing at him because he's giving this safety demonstration. He literally said to the room, safety is our priority here at Alcoa Aluminum. In fact, I want you to all take a look around the room and notice where the exits are in case we have a fire. And he gives a safety demonstration. And he literally institutes this whole safety-wide policy of the whole organization. And they thought he was insane. But what he had identified was a keystone habit of the organization. So when they're smelting aluminum and sparks are flying out, that's a safety hazard for the workers. Well, by taking care of that safety hazard and eliminating that, they were also keeping all their material. They were losing less material, less smelted aluminum, and their profits started to go up.
This was a keystone thing that changed all kinds of other things.
Yes, and what changed is he instituted this policy that if anywhere in the world there was an accident, he personally, as chairman of the board, had to be notified within 24 hours of the accident. So what happened was then the company's communication patterns all transformed as a result of changing this one keystone habit. The corporate communication patterns and the way that the management had to interact with labor, for example, and work together changed everything. And all the other
there was a
habits
cascading change at that point. So we have to find in our organizations and in ourselves what that keystone thing is.
Exactly.
Now, is there one, or will a lot of different habits work for that?
The key is in Duhigg's appendix. He talks about how to figure that out. He talks about doing some experiments with yourself to try to figure out what it is you really crave the most. What's really driving you? And he gives some really very practical illustrations of how to do that. And do a couple weeks of experimenting with changing a few things up and see what happens in your life. But I've been working at that, trying to get myself to change one keystone habit, and it's been successful the last 2 weeks. It's been really fun.
And you're hoping that this will lead to all these other things then. And I think it's just fascinating. So the book is called
The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, New York Times business reporter.
That's fascinating. Well, Bob Rongley and Dana Hansen and Steve Goodwin, thanks so much for being on the program today, and we'll continue to discuss this because I think it's so important that those of us who want change in our lives are actually able to achieve it.
Well, that's all for today on Life and Liberty Radio. Thanks so much for sharing this part of your spiritual journey with me. Now, the views on this program are not necessarily those of my advertisers, sponsors, places I work or do business with. They're purely my own, but I'm sharing them with you, so share your ideas with me. Write me on Twitter at Liberty House, LIBERTYHOUS, no E. Until next time, let's continue dreaming and working for a free and spiritually grounded society.